Hello folks, how are we? The time is 12:20. It is Wednesday the 12th of February. Bodhi is down and asleep. We're ready to go for episode 2. The focus, to remind you, if you didn't watch yesterday's episode, is to just show a little bit of a behind the scenes as to building a community. Now, what I'm hoping to do here, I guess, is to have something that I can just throw out there, you know. The whole idea of content can be very time consuming, certainly in terms of the editing side of things. So this being something that I can record and even upload from my phone onto YouTube and just go, cool, spend the least amount of time possible, I guess, on the editing process. With that, I hope that's understood with when people listen in on these episodes, that it is a little bit less planned out and it is more off the cuff. It is a little bit more raw and authentic, as it is called. But I'm leaning into that for, I suppose, for a few reasons. To, like, I feel in terms of wanting to do something like this, there always has to be something, I guess, that I'm gaining from it, you know? Like, there is no such thing as a selfless act. So for me to dedicate some time to this, considering time is a elusive and precious thing at the moment, I want to make my intentions clear, I guess, if I didn't make it clear in yesterday's episode. So I want to show you guys a process, like what I'm doing over time in terms of building the community and what it's all about, how it's going to be structured, how that's going to evolve over time, all those different things. That's going to be the aim. Keep you kind of updated on things as well. Something that I'm hoping to get out of it, and I've always made this clear what kind of some of my content is, just communication, you know, being able to communicate my ideas in a better way. And I guess one of the barriers to communication that is that I'm made aware of in this kind of scenario is the fact that I'm talking to a camera. Although I know you, a person with a soul, is on the other end of this, listening, watching. I'm just in a room right now talking to a camera. So sometimes it can be hard to get yourself across in this kind of scenario, if you get me. Or at least that's what I perceive. That's how I'm currently thinking. But in some ways, I'm trying to challenge that. I am trying to get better at it. It's certainly coming across in my other more kind of manufactured pieces of content. And in some way, I think what this will allow me to do, this is just kind of completely thinking about the idea. I don't know because I haven't gone through the reps yet. I'm thinking that it will help me come across a little bit more natural, a little bit more authentic, all that sort of stuff. And clarify things a little bit more when I hear things. Certain things will resonate from the episodes. Hopefully that's a way for me to kind of pick things from the ether to go ahead with. And in that sense as well, there is kind of like a stream of consciousness element to it. You know, we live in our own heads a lot of the time. There's a narrative that's going on. And I guess I'm only starting to recognize maybe the what that has done to kind of shape my opinions over time. So if I think about that context in terms of making it real, like actually voicing my opinions, even though it's to a camera right now, as I said, I know there's another person on the other end, but even if I am voicing that out loud, like it's helping me grapple with ideas a little bit more. So hopefully it becomes hopefully it is right now and becomes a very interesting process in terms of that idea of ideas. So the thing, I guess, that I that calls me in terms of highlighting there, like, first I want to make sure that I'm not kind of like not necessarily preparing a lot for these, but at least giving you some sort of insight. Like, I'll go into kind of like what is my routine at the moment. I didn't really go through too much of it yesterday. But one thing I wanted to touch on, just that came up there really, was this idea of practice. Like, this is a huge aspect of movement and what is the community and the things that I teach is starting, like, people obviously come in with the context of movement a lot of the time, and they're coming in with this context of like wanting to potentially improve something, wanting to learn a certain element, move a certain way. There's certainly a positive side to that, and then there's potentially a negative side to it sometimes, where people are maybe coming into they're exploring new things because they're stiff, sore, they want to resolve something, like there's a problem that they're moving away from. And the the thing, I guess, is that we need to take action towards resolving those things, or to address those things that we want to work towards. There's a lot that can go into, say, like a planning of a process, but we really need to get the reps in. We need to take action. So partly down to why I'm doing this is to, like, I sat with it for a while, and it's like, I want to get better at camera. I need to do more things on the camera. So what will be a nice way to do it, and at least something that would be of interest, that would help people get a better understanding of what is the movement, what is a movement community, and what goes into building it, what's it going to look like, all that sort of stuff. So here we are. But yeah, I guess that's one of the things that I can kind of point to there, is this idea of taking action is such a huge thing. Because it's one of the things, I guess, that comes up in conversation with a lot of people is, you delve into things, and you might find there's always a reason for maybe not taking action, and we psych ourselves out, we get in our own way, an obstacle presents itself, and we just go, oh, we shy away from it, or we pontificate, we think about all of the things that, like, oh, this won't work because of this reason, or like we just completely disregard something. It's like, oh, that's nonsense, whatever it is, when really we have no understanding because we haven't gone through the process. So I guess that shift for me has been a big thing, is trying to question some of my beliefs about certain things, about me, about different things of life, and questioning them at their root, questioning my interpretation of them. Where is it coming from? Why do I feel that way? Like, even the simple act, this was something I thought of the other day, the simple act of kind of establishing your constraints. It's something that I was maybe talking about in the goal setting mini course, was setting up the objectives, or the obstacles, understanding your constraints. And I think when you set those up, the interesting thing to ask is, why do I feel that? Why do I feel that is a constraint? Is it really a constraint, or is it something I'm just saying is a constraint? There are obviously simple things that we can point to in terms of time, and we can say, oh yeah, like, I don't have the time to go and do X, Y, and Z, and it's like, okay, cool, understandable. Is that actually the case though, or is it just your perspective right now? Like, people that would say, like, oh, I don't have the time to get up and go and do a certain thing. And it's like, you do. If you're honest with yourself, you'll recognize that. And I guess I say that from that lens of, like, if you're honest with yourself, it's hard to be honest with ourselves sometimes. It's hard to see through our nonsense, the things that we say. So pointing to that as part of the process with goal setting, it's important to establish the constraints, and then it's important to question them. So I guess that's where I'm coming from with my approach to something like this. I just want to test it, and I want to see what happens. To give you a behind the scenes, to not just ramble on, to point to maybe some of the things that I'm doing in terms of my routine, like what has been giving me value. Like, I know for a lot of people, they might look at something like movement culture, movement practice, like it has its own kind of, it has its own baggage, if that makes sense. People if people are aware of what a movement practice is, or the space that it is, they might have a certain perspective on something like this and say like, oh, that's that. But I guess you want to make the space as welcoming as possible, as understandable for people to, as inviting for people, to come in and explore it in their own way. So something that I'm doing currently is, because as I've pointed to with Bodhi, he's getting more of a established schedule. Something that I've had to do and had to manage is like very early starts and kind of tapping into something that I did when I was in my early 20s, when I was working in as a PT on the gym floor, like getting up very early starts. It's something I've had to tap into recently, but it's brought me value in some ways. One of the things that I have to manage around is my partner Lucy's schedule. She works from about 9:30 to 2:30. We don't have a childminder or anything like that, so we're kind of just juggling between the two of us with being around to take care of Bodhi. And so with that, my work is somewhat flexible in the sense that I can do it whenever, but then the amount of time in the day is the issue. Where do I work? All that sort of stuff. So something that I've had to do is just go back to kind of early starts. So like say, for example, this morning, up at 3:30, I was up to do my own morning practice, movement, and then sit of some form, and kind of playing around with different elements. I can go into detail of those in kind of future episodes, give you more of kind of like insight and point you to maybe the community where I'll make some of those protocols available for sure. But yeah, it's something that I was like, I'd been kind of grappling with for so long, because he was so inconsistent with his time and trying to find the time to, there was a level of inconsistency, because sometimes I was getting up on time and I was fine. He would have a good night's sleep, and it would mean I could get up and I could do my morning practice, and then I could go into work and everything would be fine and plain sailing. But then you'd have kind of like 2 days back to back of him kind of like waking up multiple times in the night. He'd kind of get up feeling groggy, and you'd be like, oh crap, I've got to go and do like this, and you're kind of like half asleep doing most of it. And there's still that strain. Like it's not as if I'm speaking from how things have been going like the past week, as I said, with his schedule. So if things change again, they will change again. You just kind of have to roll with the punches to some degree. But because that was happening for so long, it was kind of presenting its own issue. And I guess now the consistency is nice to have, because I know I'm a person that operates with lots of when there's a schedule. I like that level of flow that it brings in terms of the. I know certain people don't like the confines of habit and schedule, but as I said in the previous episode, it's not necessarily in my nature, but I find that's where I get the most amount of flow and do the most amount of deep creative work, because that's something I've been able to tap into with the early starts, is some level of deep work. There's a certain energy that comes with it, after doing my kind of morning practice. I have kind of like a 4-hour period-ish of like undisturbed work, because sometimes the work can be messy. You're responding to people and messages and all that sort of stuff, and it kind of it pulls you out of something. The concept comes from, I think it's Cal Newport, this idea of deep work. He was where I heard of it first. I've heard others talk about it. I don't know if there's anyone before him that actually came up with the concept, but just the idea of undisturbed. We have so many things that can pull our attention in modern life. So anything like that where you can get very undisturbed work is very valuable. So that's given me a chance to really sit with that, to have that kind of 4 hours, and then I've just kind of had to accept to some degree that the rest of the day is somewhat unpredictable. There's a level of predictability now with him going down for a nap kind of close to 12, me being able to do something like this off the cuff, and get into a bit of work from kind of like 12 to 2:30, and then afterwards, in terms of the evening, it's really around like the school. I've classes on a Monday and Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. So kind of like prep around that stuff at various stages, and obviously then just the logistic nature. I actually have to go and do those classes themselves, and so Lucy has to take Bodhi, and she has to do various things as well. So we're always kind of like juggling that. And I guess the thing that I wanted to say earlier in some sense is there's aspects of movement culture that when you see it kind of from the top down, if you want to consider it that way, like it's very interesting having conversations with more experienced practitioners, people that are very much deep within the process, have got lots of years of training experience, and are the ones kind of leading the field in terms of like research and development, all that sort of stuff. It's very interesting hearing how, I've heard various people talk about it, how kind of out of touch it may feel, and I certainly don't want that to come across. You want to stay relevant in terms of being able to connect with people. You can't connect with everyone, of course, but you don't want to be out of touch, out of sync to a high degree. So being able to understand what people are going through on a regular basis in terms of their own time constraints hopefully gives me a better opportunity to communicate that to people, in the sense that it's like, you may have conversations with people where they're kind of pointing to various things where they're like, oh, I have this constraint, that constraint, and whatever, and you're kind of like, yeah, like, is it really a time constraint? Like, you could get up a little bit earlier. And I guess I speak from the experience of being like getting up at like 3:34 most mornings now. So I've battled through it. There's some mornings where it has been like, I love to say there's this idea of like, you want the optimal experience of being able to get up out of bed with no effort and almost a pull out of bed, and that's happened a few times. I think it's starting to happen more recently as well, which is very, very good. But sometimes it's been a struggle. Like, it's been a fight with myself. It's almost like I'm physically needing to drag myself out of the bed itself versus being pulled out of the bed. You know what I mean? And it's always interesting then when you have those conversations with people about like the lack of drive that's there, and it's like, cool, we have to resolve that issue. We have to find ways to address that, because there's an opportunity maybe being missed there in terms of the early mornings that you could really tap into. That might just be the thing to overcome that sparks a level of change. Those are things that can be resolved, that you don't just have to accept. So yeah, those are they're interesting things to consider for myself over the past little while. Like, I've certainly learned those lessons. That's the thing that's speaking to me at the moment, with how my schedule is going. With that, I'll keep it short and to the point. Short, I don't even know how long this is, probably like 15, 18 minutes already. But folks, thank you very much. We'll keep on a roll. I probably won't get one tomorrow. I may not. We're off to a wedding over the weekend. On Friday, so we've got to travel down to Cork. We're staying with family to then be able to go over to Kerry, like at least be somewhere close to Bodie. Like, if we were off to Kerry, we'd be just kind of too far away if something were to go wrong. But Bodie is staying with family, so he's being taken care of. We're not just abandoning him, I promise. But yeah, that's a whole thing as well in terms of a few days, obviously being away. So I just don't know how predictable my schedule is going to be in terms of setting down a camera and speaking to it for a period of time. So you'll have to forgive me about the inconsistency. But I'll get straight back into it once we're back to a regular routine. But for the moment, folks, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you soon.